n'okukirawo ndi mubwengula n'okukomawo ndi muwanguzi nantamegwa ndi muwanguzi naggwano gyenvudde tewabadde kumpi okutuuka ku mwanjo mukama weebale kumpanirira weebale kunzijjukira kubadde kuwamansa nga ntambula njigumira kati neewulira amaanyi kankuwa ekitiibwa n'ettendo ompisiza mu muyago gwali gukunta ze yali kando kituufu okebera mitima egiriko amaziga eye kituufu okebera mitima egimenyese tegireka kunyolwa ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi nyweredde kugwe mukama omutonzi w'eggulu n'ensi buli kimu gwakimala wabweru ne munda mu nju kulukutira ng'omugga bugenda okukeera enkya ng'ebitaala byange bitadde nga buli kyange kiteredde onya omutima gw'obukyayi n'amalala gana gandimbalimba mbeera ekyokulabirako ekirungi gye mbeera ne gye mpita ndi muwanguzi lwa kisa kye kyekinnyambye seyinza mbeera sirina maanyi nga tandiko ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ababadde banvuganya sigamba nti mbagaya naye lulu lwange mulinde mposa olulala I'm so happy today as you know this my day I'm so ready to go God my Lord my way I'm so happy today as you know this my day I'm so ready to go God my Lord my way kyemba sidda gyemba ne bw'oba ompa benzi mwenda ebirungi ebisinga biri mu maaso nsonga mbere ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi ndi muwanguzi ndi muwengula ndi muwanguzi
Hello.
Jehovah, every
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tuweereddwa omukisa nate wano ku New Life International Christian Center esitona okomawo nate mu programu yaffe. Abantu balina endwadde nnyingi ezibaluma naye bwe buno obulwadde abantu abamu batamanya nti bulwadde. Bw'otegeera embeera gy'olimu kikuyamba okuwona. Twagala okubasaasira mwenna abalwadde bannange, tubasabira Mukama abasuuse abafiiriddwa, tubasaasidde nnyo bannange nga kitalo, ebitalo bingi. Enjogera y'olwaleero eti bikira nange nkubikire, mbikira nkubikire, ebadde nseeredde nti nva Bunyoro, naye ebyebyo bwe bulamu bwe tutambuliramu. So embeera nzibu nnyo, tubasabira abali e Uganda, twongera okwegayirira Katonda waffe abakuume. Naye olunaku lwaleero tukomyewo natera mu studio, ku ludda eno ninayo omusawo omutendeke, omusawo Duncan, nembeera ne ssenga w'abaana, naye nga kansala mutendeke, ate erudda eno nembeera ne Susaana, naye mutendeke alina ebitabo bye byawera. So olunaku lwaleero tugenda kubeera kumala bbanga ddene, naye tuddamu era okwogera ku mbeera ey'obulwadde obw'obwongo. Obulwadde bw'obwongo bannange si kintu kya kivve, ti obulwadde bukulumye toyagala kwogera, bulinga omusujja. Sujja gwe gukuluma bannange omusujja gunnuma. So twagala okuggyawo eyo stigma abantu balowooza nti obwongo bulwadde olwala ng'ebitundu ebirala by'omubiri. Omutwe guyinza okukuluma, olubuto luyinza okukuluma, omutima guyinza okukuluma, oyinza okulwala kansa. So wabeerawo obulwadde era Susaana agenda kutunnyonnyola kiki ekibeerawo. Ate obuwongo bw'olina bwe bwange, bwe bwono, bwe bw'oli. Ffenna challenge eno esobola okutuukirira. So okubeera n'embeera eyo si musango, tolina musango gw'okoze. Twagala kulaga nti mbeera ebeerawo, wabeerawo chemical imbalance, bino ne bikola bwe biti, bino ne bikola bwe biti. So kantandikire ne wa musawo Duncan abuuze kubatulaba era abatuwuliriza, Senga Rose, Susaana bw'anaaba yeeyanjula ate atusoosotolere omulamwa gw'olwaleero.
Mukama yebazibwe. Mukama yebazibwe. Amannya bampita Duncan Muwanguzi. Neddira Nkima. I'm a registered nurse by profession, and I'm so blessed to be here. I go to New Life Christian International Center era ng'omusumba waffe Pastor Sam Mutyaba, era nga ne mama wange waali wano leero, mukyala Jessica Muwanguzi. She's seated over there. Yes, thank you all for being here.
Amen, amen. Mukama yebazibwe abooluganda. Nange mbalamusizza nnyo mu linnya lya Mukama waffe Yesu Kristo. Ne mbeebaza mwenna okubeera nga mukuŋŋaanye ne mufiiriza akadde ne muba nga muli wamu naffe. That means mutu encouraginga ne mutuwa amaanyi ne mutuzzaamu essuubi nti bye tukola birina omugaso eri abantu ne mu community. Kubanga ngaffe abava Africa naddala Uganda, lwaki tuvuddeyo okuleeta ekintu nga kino? Lwakuba eka twali tetukikuliddeemu nga tetukiwulirangako. Tulwanyisa embeera nti omuntu yenna asobola okulwala obulwadde obw'obwongo. It's not si kivve and treatment gyeri. That's why twagala okumanya buvaawa, tubadde twogera ebiseera ebisinga butandika butya era bujjanja biki. N'olwaleero tweyongera okubategeeza okuba nti tuleese ekyenjawulo nga twongera ku mugatte gwaffe guli ogwaggwa, tusobole okubeera nga tubaweereza. Amannya n'eddoboozi Rose Sajjabbi, ssenga w'abaana. Nsanyuse nnyo obbalaba. Nate n'abo abali ku cyberspace, Zoom, tubasanyukidde. Nange ndi omu kumukkiriza ali Stoneham mu church ya New Life International Christian Center. Nsanyuse okubalaba.
Hello. Mukama yebazibwe. Nze bampita Susan Wilkinson. I'm a trained nurse practitioner by training. I specialize in mental health treatment and substance use treatment as well. Once again, Auntie Rose and everyone, thank you for having me and thank you for calling me back to continue this. And today we're going to be talking about addictions overall. So addictions is an umbrella overall. It is a brain disorder, and we're going to be breaking it down in terms of how does that look like in day-to-day and what types of addictions do we really encounter. But more importantly, I will also spend more time trying to help you understand in terms of the brain disorder, the connections of what addiction is. Because oftentimes in our culture, we treat addictions as a characterological flaw. We tend to tell people, omwana alina empisa embi, omwana anywa nnyo omwenge, omwana akozesa drugs, omwana akola biki. Naye nga ne twerabira nti ng'omuntu bw'abeera ne blood pressure, omutima gwe gubeera involved. Likewise, addictions, the brain is what is really involved. And yes, while there are other factors that might actually contribute to that addiction, but primarily we want to clarify and also reiterate that addiction is a brain disorder. It's not necessarily a characterological flaw. Now, along the way, some people might develop characterological flaws to continue supporting the addiction. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs or substances, I tend not to call it drugs, I tend to call it substances. And whether it's food addiction, whether it's sexual addiction, whether it's all sorts of addictions, there are so many of them. But just to introduce the topic for today, we're talking about addictions. And please, I will certainly go back to Auntie Rose to throw in a little bit, and also Duncan to share, and then I'll come back and just go through the various terms and how also addictions affect us in terms of a biological, psychosocial perspective. And that way we can begin peeling the layers for us all to continue understanding.
Thank you, Susan. So I'm going to talk about what addictions, addictive disorders, or behavior addiction, as Susan has said. And I'm going to name what addictions we are going to talk about. So, addiction is a need to do something, to experience pleasure, and also to remove discomfort. Most people who are addicted. But one thing I know that I think all of us are addicted in somehow, somewhere. It may be a small addiction to you, but I think everybody is addicted. But if it goes beyond that, it turns into a disorder. So we have gambling, substance abuse, such as alcohol, pain medication, illegal drugs, binge drinking, over-medicating. We have smoking. We have overspending, shopping, reckless sex, unprotected, reckless driving, binge eating, hoarding, sexting, and other risky use of social media, over-exercising. We have gaming, internet addiction, TV addiction, stealing, or shoplifting. There are many, but we chose to talk about some. So I would hand over to Duncan to talk about a few, and then back to
nze nja kubaako ekibuuzo nga tetunagenda wa Susana, but let him first contribute. Mbuuze? Yeah, kubanga we've heard like ebintu ebimu ng'ebyo babiroga bye mwogedde. Ti omuntu oyo bamuloga okunywa omwenge n'atamiira. Kaakati awo nze njagala mu by'oyogedde mulimu ka area ak'eddogologo. Bwe bitaba ddogo mulimu area y'emizimu. Kubanga ebintu ebimu kibeera addictive, kiba nti waliwo omuzimu ogwamuyingiramu ogumulemesa. Kati ako nako ka area simanyi mu expertise yo oba eriyo akawaatu akagamba nti n'emizimu nagyo girina engeri gye ginfluencinga oba omuntu bamuloga kuba nawulirako nti oyo ambi sente ze zonna zigenda mwenge bamuloga. So I don't know oba ne phenomena eyo erina weeyingiramu ey'eddogo naye nga mwagirisaakingako nayo tube nga tugyogerako oba oli awo nga nayo gyeri.
Okay, I'll go first and then maybe Susan can interject. Echemizimu, I'm not sure, but I'm going to speak about the science aspect that I'm sure of. A lot of times, what I think substance abuse, especially substances, as talking about addictive disorders, there's substance-related and non-substance. Obviously, the gambling and the sex and all the other stuff is non-substance related. So substance-related abuse is the alcohol, the cocaine, all the other drugs, opioids, and all the things that people abuse. I think all those things are a lot of times a coping mechanism for something, for a precursor that happened. It could be traumatic. Um, it could be stress. It could be things that have happened. A lot of times, when people go through that stress, or we were talking about depression a couple of weeks back, a lot of times as the Mukama yali atutonda embiri gyaffe, we're not meant to be stressed out all the time. So a lot of times your body will try to find a way out, or even your mind. And a lot of times people find comfort in those things. That's their escape from whatever is hurting, the pain and the trauma that they're experiencing. So it could be alcohol. Alcohol itself is a, they call it a central nervous system depressant. What happens when you take alcohol? It actually increases a certain neurotransmitter in your brain that's responsible for reducing the brain activity that's going on. So it brings calmness and drowsiness and that feeling of relaxation. So in the moment you feel relaxed, your problems appear to go away. It doesn't mean they're gone. And that's also depending on how much alcohol you're having and how fast you're drinking it. All those things factor into it. But it in the moment it makes you forget, not actually forget, but in the moment it's your escape for that person. Bwabanga abadde alina ekimuliko mu ekyo ekiseera kiba kigenze. Bweba bana bakosa IV drugs or cocaine, ezo zikola differently because they're CNS stimulants, but same thing. In the moment, it takes them out of that environment that's stressful for them. It could be different things. Mukama atutola nga tuli banjawulo. A lot of times character and how we're brought up, ekintu ekikustressinga ze kiyinza obutanstressinga, oba gwe kyolaba ng'ekitono omuntu omulala kiyinza okumuyisa obubi ennyo. So based on all those different things, n'engeri gye twakuzibwamu, we deal differently with stress. Kati omuntu obulumi obwo, I like to think that that's when people tend to use these things as an escape. Naba nga agenze mu drugs, agenze mu alcohol, akola ebintu byonna nga Susan bwe yatandise ng'agamba, a lot of times obwongo bwe bulwadde. Naye engeri cultures n'engeri gye batukuzaamu, mental health is one of the things that stigmatize the most. So tewali ajja kufaayo time kuwa muntu ono budde nti kale oba tuwulire story oba ki ekigenda maaso, oba kale omwana anywa nnyo omwenge, what's the story behind? Are the parents abusing this girl? Are the parents abusing this young man? But bajja kurushinga okumujajinga, mwana yayonooneka, mwana akola bino, ate kati ffe ng'Abakristaayo ne tuleetamu n'emizimu for everything. But in actual sense, this person's sick. Nga bwe waligambye nti omuntu alina diabetes, or omuntu alina hypertension, or omuntu alina something going on, they need help. A lot of times it could be medical interventions, it could be just psychological interventions. They actually need help. So I think I personally want us to all deviate from that, because I feel like mizimu and everything is the stereotype itself, personally, because genes okubaawo nga jo weegiri naye abantu abasinga engeri gye bakyogeramu, they're already stereotyping this person. And a lot of times omuntu ono already aba by the time agenze ku alcohol, that means they're self-isolated already, akopinga nga ye ng'omuntu. Kati gye mukomate okumu-stereotyping, you're going to push them farther away. So I personally like not to say those things. I prefer maybe people not say those things. It could be a valid point. It could be a valid point. Naye, I would rather you sit with that person or try and find out the backstory, or manye then of gezeko muyambo bosabe naye. As Christians, the one thing that we have is hope. And that's what we're supposed to bring to other Christians or even non-Christians, right? When we come to Christ, the untrodden that when we come to Christ, the number one thing that we get, Reverend Frida that sharing, we're no longer bondage to sin, right? We get this new freedom, and now we're slaves to righteousness, right? With that comes responsibility. Responsibility not only to ourselves, but to God and to our fellow brothers and sisters. So I think it's best to, for due diligence, omuntu nomubererawo, you approach the brother, if you gotta pray with them, if you gotta advise them to go seek medical interventions and medical advice, I feel like that's more socially apprehensible than actually stereotyping to anywa mwenge, mizimu, yayononeka, all that other stuff that comes with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for really highlighting that. And to piggyback off of what you have said, there is no scientific evidence or whatsoever that addictions are because of emizimu or are because of amalogo. And I think as clinicians, we do have a responsibility to society to clarify and fight misinformation, because it's misinformation that really holds people back from coming forward and getting the help that they really, really need. So I'm going to just read this for you verbatim, and this is the definition of addiction according to SAMHSA. SAMHSA is a federal government entity that actually supports research as well as treatment for addictions. And this is what they say. Addiction is a brain disorder characterized by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite the adverse consequences. So the key word is rewarding stimuli. And then they go ahead and say, despite the involvement of a number of psychosocial factors, a biological process, one that is induced by repeated exposure to addictive stimuli, there is the core pathology that drives the development and maintenance of an addiction according to the brain disease model of addiction. And then further down, addiction is a biopsychosocial disorder characterized by persistent use of drugs, food, alcohol, etc., despite substantial harm and adverse consequences. And what do I need to really clarify on that? And the reason is we tend to think of addiction as just relegated to substances. We forget that there is behavior addictions. Addiction to gambling, that falls under behavior addiction. Addiction to sex, that falls under behavior addiction. No one is getting harmed, no one is putting anything in their mouth or in their body, but they are doing things that are detrimental to their own being, but they cannot even stop themselves because there is that rewarding stimuli that keeps pushing them back to getting back. Even if they know that what I'm doing is going to cause me pain, they cannot stop themselves. Then we have shopping addictions. We all know someone who has shopped their way through credit card debt. No matter what, they know that I cannot control my addiction towards shopping. They have maxed out all of the credit card. But when they do go for that shopping, there is something in the brain, what we call the dopamine reward system, that gets activated. And there is a feel good. There is a good feeling that certainly comes out of that. You've heard people say, my therapy is shopping, because it does work. After shopping, someone really feels good. They look like they are walking on cloud nine until they get home and they realize, geez, I just spent $3,000 that I don't even know how I'm going to pay back. But that will not stop them to go again, because again, it's a compulsion. It's a compulsion. They do not have control over that. And that's where treatment comes in. And when you get to understand addictions, in a way, your heart or your compassion is actually calibrated, because then you begin having empathy on people as opposed to really judging them. Now, having grown up in the church, you could not tell me anything about people who drink. What are you talking about? Okay? But it took me spending 6 months with an addiction psychiatrist and rounding with them on the detox flows, addiction flows, and all of that to really understand. And I'm really so grateful to Dr. Chang, because she really helped me understand. And now, I'm also going to be clear that treating addictions is not something easy. It's so mentally exhausting. I'm sure, Auntie Rose, so so you can also talk to that, because again, along the way, as people are in the throes of addiction, they learn to manipulate others so that they can get their fix. They learn to lie so that they can get their fix. They learn that when they want their fix, they're willing to do anything and everything, including stealing from the loved ones, including shoplifting. So those are all the repercussions of addictions. We all know people who have had beautiful lives and they get addicted to using opioids. But over time, they are not functional. They cannot keep a job. They've lost their homes. They are in debt. So the next thing you know, someone who was a decent member of society is engaging in prostitution, because that's how they can get their fix. It's not even about safety for them. That whole prefrontal cortex is already hijacked. The decision-making center of the brain is already hijacked, because again, it is something that keeps bringing a reward. So maybe if we can begin understanding addiction from that perspective, we can have empathy. We can have a little bit of mercy onto people than just crucifying them. And by that, we can then bring them the care and the love that they really need.
Nina ekibuuzo kubanga when we are talking about addiction, it looks like when you look at it, it's like on the negative side, like gambling. Can a minister, for example, I've seen ministers, nabera so obsessed n'okuweereza kubanga kyebikanga oleka byolina okukola n'ofakasinga, mainly the pastors, n'abanga mukyalo we tamufaako, n'abo abaana be tabafaako, ebyawakawe nga tabifaako, nga ye adilightingira mu kino ekyokusanyusa Katonda n'akikola n'abanga it's like all the other areas in his life ziringanga ezistopinze. Ekyo nakyo kiyinza okulabika nga kiri mu addiction, ng'ate akola ekintu ekirabika nti kirungi ekibenefitinga.
Kati jjukira nti twayogedde ku compulsive engagement in a rewarding stimuli. So really, if you sat down with Norm Sumboyo and you drill down and you peel down the onion, at the end of the day, it could be that the addiction is to the glory and power they receive as a reward. It's not so much the people they serve, but it's the glory and power they receive, because it puts them in a positive light, and they are now addicted to that kind of adoration from the masses. Therefore, they are willing to sacrifice their loved ones' needs to continue getting that adoration and people putting them on a pedestal. So on the outside, on the front, we're thinking, oh, musajja wa Katonda oyo, he's so dedicated. But his people who depend on him as a primary source of sustenance are suffering. And this person is utterly disconnected from that. That is considered an addiction. No, you can be addicted to the glory that comes and the power and the celebrity that comes with it.
So in a situation like that, kakati oyo abeera diagnosed atya, kubanga tuyagala kugamba omuntu yinza okubeera very sensitive, kati oyo ye yafuna realization n'amanya nti n'akyawula n'abagamba nti mpulira amaanyi, mpulira abantu, kubanga munange eri abasumba bye banyumirwa ssebo abamu ne babakwatira ku zibayibuli ne bagenda nga bagwaba balongosezza ku ngatto, abasajja abakulu ne bafukamira. Kakati ekintu ekyo omuntu omanya otya nti kino kiyiseewo, kati kagabo oba waakumuyamba kati ate toyagala olowooze nti nno kyali naye nga takiri. How can you help somebody like that? Ayinza kubanga akola alaga traits ki eziraga nti gaayo ono aweereza Mukama naye alabika ebintu kakati alina kyanyumirwa kyajjamu muno. It is not just a matter of serving God. Kati omuntu mu situation ng'eyo omutegeera otya?
Mostly for addiction, the addict is the person who realizes that he is addicted. He's the last person to know. He's the last person to know or realize that he's addicted. Because the more he engages in this behavior, we can call it a behavior, because if you tell us like he didn't even care about his family. So he says he's so godly and he is serving God, but not realizing that there is a selfishness in him, not knowing that he's the head of the house, though he's serving Christ. So, to me, I would think that if you neglect your household, your children, your wife, or whoever you're taking care of, and saying that you're serving God, you're putting yourself in a position that you're so godly, it's only God you have to look at, instead of like you as a head, you're serving Christ. What did we learn about in the service? A man who is godly is a man who first does what? Take care of his wife, children, and his family. So this person is not doing a bad job, but he's addicted in a sense. He wants to be on top, taking himself. They carry the Bibles, they kneel, they do everything. He feels now he's like almost the power of everything. So he's addicted. In the beginning, I talked about, like, I think every one of us is addicted in somehow, somewhere. It may be a little addiction, like craving for something little, but that is also exactly. It may not end up like a disorder, but I can say that he's now not realizing that what he's doing is pleasing himself. That's not pleasing God, because if you can't take care of your family, that means you're not pleasing God. To me, that's what I could talk about.
I'm going to ask one more question concerning that, because I have a friend who ended up being divorced. They were married. The pastor was very much into the work of God. So when the woman started complaining, she said, I think she just wants to be here. I'm here working for the kingdom. It's like, we have children, you have food, you have everything. Why should I be there? They are not going to preach the gospel. This woman just wants me to be in bed with her. So are justifying from the scriptures that this woman is being petty to be there. You take care of the children, the car is here, you have the food. Why do you want me here? Let me just go. Not so many people are serving the Lord. So Kubanga, this marriage ended. They separated. So how can you make such a, is there hope for such a person? How could you help, like, so that they couldn't, like, end up divorced? Because it's like this person is bringing the scriptures. It's like people are going to hell. He looks like he's very concerned, and the things at home are okay, but the woman is very lonely. Feels like, well, you are serving God. Yeah, we have children. We are not going to be in bed all the time. So I don't know how often they were enjoying their marital bed, but it was kind of like this woman is carnally minded. We are here, we are not here, we are not going to live here forever. Even in heaven, there is no wedding. We're not going to be married. Let me do the work of God.
Wow, that's a very loaded question, but certainly we will try to address it as much as we can. I just want to clarify that we are not marriage counselors, because a lot of people have issues going on in their marriages, and they cope by engaging exerting themselves in activities to really escape what's going on in their marriages. So we also have to acknowledge that sometimes it could be a transference. And I just want to share that some of the contributors to addictions, like I said, we use the biopsychosocial model. And what we mean by that, in the psychosocial aspect of things, we have coping mechanisms, we have social skills that are deficient, we have family relationships that are toxic but also disempowering, that can also push people towards addiction. We have poor self-esteem. Then we also have mental health issues. And then on the social side, we have peer pressure. Some of the people begin by, oh, so-and-so wants me to go hang out with them and have a drink. That's how it starts. Then you have family circumstances. Like I said, we don't know what's going on in the pastor's marriage. We just see the outside, but there could be something deeper. Then we have family relationships that are also toxic and dysfunctional. And then from the biological perspective, we have the physical health. Some people have chronic pain, and they do need pain medicine to control the pain, but then along the way, they get addicted to the pain medicine. Then we have genetic vulnerabilities, and what we mean by that, oftentimes it's a known fact by now that if you have one or two parents who struggles with an addiction, you are biologically loaded, first-degree relatives. In fact, when we are doing assessments, we take at least 3 generations, say, on the maternal and paternal side, both of the grandparents. Have you ever had anyone struggle with addictions, and what was it? Then you come down to the parents, then you come down to the patient, and also if they have children, you also look at them. There was a longitudinal study done. It's called Sons of what? Alcoholics. It does talk about the genetic vulnerabilities. That's why some people, when they know that my dad struggled with substance use, my uncle so-and-so struggles with substance use, as a way of actually protecting themselves, they don't touch at all because it doesn't take long, it doesn't take much for them to become hooked. And then we also have the drug effects. Some of the drug effects, for example, some of the medications we take, they give you a sense of euphoria, and it also rewards the dopamine reward system, and then you find yourself addicted towards something. So to go back to your question, I think it would be nice to really talk to the pastor and try to understand what else is going on underneath, because I have a feeling it's not just what we see. There is more to the story.
Just to add on what Susan just said, personally, I would think, and since we're talking about pastors, I would actually try and use scripture to maybe explain what's going on. Today, I think Nicholas shared this today as well, the scripture that tells us, husbands, love your wife as Christ did what? Love the church. I like to think sometimes it's not a direct reference, but you could in a way look at addictions as idolatry, right? You're idolizing something. In a way, you're I don't like to use the term as slave, but in a way it becomes your master because you're not in control. So what happens, like she said, it may be so many underlying things going on. Personally, it would not make sense to me for a man of God to come forth and say he's doing his best for the kingdom of God, but not taking care of what's going on in his house. Because that's your first ministry. It starts in your house. So for me, in actual sense, it makes sense what Antro said, because then you're idolizing yourself or what you're doing, which is totally the wrong message. That's not why we're called to God. That's not what we're called for as Christians. We weren't actually called to ourselves because we don't even need to do any work. Christ already did all the work, right? We're just vessels, and in this world, we're called to help out, right? Christ paid the price. We do not have, we're always taught salvation is not by works. It's not because you're the best speaker and you're going to speak to masses and you bring people closer to God. It doesn't work that way. Jesus is working inside you. So it wouldn't make sense for that man of God to say he's focusing on ministry and neglecting his wife. I would totally think there's something going on that's not being said, or in actual sense, he's idolizing something else than the actual ministry.
And also, if you remember what you said, that he said he's actually one of the only few. There are not so many. There is a certain sense of narcissism in that kind of statement, because at the end of the day, the harvest is big. God can use anyone, including stones, if he has to. So by neglecting your primary ministry, like you have said, Duncan, I think to me, there is something there that maybe the pastor needs help in terms of maybe sitting down with someone in a way.
Okay. I don't know whether you wanted to go ahead with more explanation or we should go into the different addictions one by one.
I think to make it relevant but also interactive, we can try and tackle the things that our community particularly struggles with. That way, we can certainly make it pertinent, whereby people can actually relate to it. Because the truth is, the literature is quite dry. You know, sitting down and explaining to someone the neurobiology of addictions, they're like, okay, it's very easy to really, really tune you out. But let's say in the Ugandan community here, we all know how much our people struggle with alcohol use disorder.
Oh, yes.
Okay? And I like to just clarify that we no longer use stigmatizing terminology like abuse, because at the end of the day, we know that if these people could stop on their own, they would. Some of them have really paid the price, including health-wise, including financially, but it comes to a point when the person has no control over what they are using. So that's why we call it a substance use disorder. We've moved away from the abuse, because the abuse, you are blaming the victim. We are using derogatory terminology to blame the victim, and that's what pushes people even further into hiding because of that shame. But first and foremost, we recognize that people are human beings, worthy of respect, created in the image of God, but they struggle with this substance. For example, I know that people in the AA world, they still call themselves alcoholics, but as a clinician, I would not call someone an alcoholic. I would call them someone, Mr. Who, X or B, who struggles with a substance use disorder, and that substance happens to be alcohol. Now, in our culture, the consumption of alcohol has been normalized. Kids become exposed to alcohol at a very, very young age. Oftentimes, it's really the parties, and the uncle is drinking a beer. They hand the 6-7-year-old, have a sip. And they laugh, oh, akana kano kajja kuba kanywi ka mwenge, right? But what they are doing, right? And they do it all the time because, you know, everyone is having fun, right? Oh, kwako, nywako, kalabye kajja kuba kanywi ka mwenge. Right. But what they are doing is that the growing brain, when you expose it to substances, when you expose the growing brain whereby there's so much pruning, early exposure to really substances increases the risk for addictions. Because when you give that brain a substance, the substance has a way of like formulating brain pathways that are so familiar in future. It's like, oh, I remember how this tastes. And they have a high affinity of running towards what? That substance. That's why here, if you give a little child alcohol, you're going to go to jail. Oh, okay? And if a child goes to school and they say, oh, my mommy gave me a sip of wine, the teacher is going to file a section, whatever they do, and call Child Protection Services. Because we understand that exposing a growing brain to substances at a very early age, we don't give them a fighting chance. And there is a reason also why they try to limit alcohol use to 21 years. Although what beats my understanding is that we still have cigarettes at 18 years old. I think we should also raise that to 21 years old, because at the end of the day, the brain is still growing. There is no scientific evidence to that. I would love to say it is, but it would be a lot easier to really explain that way. But we don't have any scientific evidence to that, unfortunately. Yeah.
So somebody being diagnosed with whatever disorder they have, so you have a certain protocol you follow, and it's like if somebody's by themselves, if they're by themselves and they're in denial, how can that person get help? Because if somebody is married or if somebody's daughter or son, they can see the signs and maybe come and tell, he's like this, he's been doing this, he's doing that. Maybe he has trouble. So what would happen with somebody who stays by themselves?
So there was a time, I don't know if you guys remember a TV show called Intervention. There was a time when families would all gang up and we are going to set an intervention, get them to treatment, yada, yada. At the end of the day, research shows that the only person who can decide when to get treatment is the person themselves. So we have a modality of treatment called motivational interviewing. Sometimes by engaging with them, literally you have to be patient. And that's why I said treating substances is no walk in the park, because you have to be patient. You also have to give up control as a clinician, that it's not up to you. Your job is there to support this person and nudge them and kind of provide factual information for them to be able to make that decision for themselves. You cannot force someone into what treatment. And we have tried. It did not work. And at the end of the day, it's more expensive, actually. But if you can work with them and continue educating them, and most of the time they know anyways. They know. But then you're like, okay, what gets in the way of you connecting the dots? If I hear you right, you know that substance use causes you pain in such and such ways. Yet, on the other hand, you continue using ABCDs. So there is something we call the change talk in motivational interviewing. And we also have motivational enhancement therapy. That's where you just engage someone by being non-judgmental, but rolling with their resistance and validating them. By doing that, you are actually winning them over to your side in a way. So that's where the psychological training comes in. So in a nutshell, we can't force people into a treatment. There can be court-mandated treatments, but they don't last. We all know that.
I think the first step in recovery.
Microphone.
The first step in recovery is to face reality. To you the addict, before you can break any addiction, you have to know that I have a problem. That it's a problem, because that's the only thing which I know that most people, they don't realize that they have a problem. She talked about like people may drink many beers and say, I can't drive home. I can't do everything when I'm drunk. So to them, if it comes to that disorder, they don't even realize that what they are doing, they're addicted. It's really, really hard. And as Susan said, that you can't force them. So most of the family tries hard to see that they push them. The more you be confrontational, it makes it worse. You have to be really nice and kind to them so that you persuade them and you talk to them nicely to show them you just to weigh the pros and cons of what you're doing. You're addicted, yes. Then what? You go step by step. But if you push and say, you know what, judging them, giving them names, they end up like resisting and isolating. So the more they see you, they know what you're going to tell them. So they have to make sure that I can't go around those people because they're going to tell me something which I don't want to hear. Because it comes to a stage whereby there is no control. For them, they can't control it anymore. So starting like there is no medication as like, okay, let us give her Tylenol. If he takes this amount of milligrams, she will get better. No. It's about, the first recovery is about him or her to accept the truth that, you know what, this is a problem to me.
So what happens on that line? Like, what happens if somebody really needs help? For example, if you have a roommate and that roommate has a situation, so, and it's like he's really or she's really doing things which are really crazy. So what do you do? In a case like that, whereby you really see that this person needs help, but is in denial, does not allow, it doesn't want to go. So what do you do? What is your responsibility as a roommate with someone and is exhibiting signs that maybe there is some situation going on.
Are they a danger to themselves or like other people?
What do you mean by danger to themselves?
Are
Like
they
want to cut themselves?
Yeah, maybe aggressive.
yeah, aggressive? Are they going to harm themselves? Are they going to really harm someone else?
Well, somebody might not be harming himself like physically, but I've seen someone goes into the house, has a cell phone, throws it in the trash, gets all the bed sheets, throws them in the trash, the bank cards, valuable things. I would think that this is he's causing damage because it's like throwing all the things he has amounting to the trash thing. And when they come to take the trash, nobody's going to take it out. So in a situation, it has to be like he's going to kill himself. How about destroying his property? Is that okay?
And again, that's where addiction is such a challenging specialty to deal with because you can't control. You have to give up control. So as a roommate, you might think, oh my God, I have to save this person. But let's say you call the ambulance, they show up, and he tells them, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with that one. They won't do anything. They won't, and they cannot section them if they are not a danger to themselves or a danger to society. So, and that's where, when it comes to addiction, it's compassion and patience, which most of us don't have. But also, you're not trained professionals, so you would not be able to understand. So, really, the easiest thing that happens is people cut them off or people avoid them. But if you ever have a roommate and you feel like they are a danger to themselves and yourself, pick up a 911 and call. They will come and really assess them for safety.
Yeah, just to add on that, a lot of substance use disorders and people that have all these addictions to different substances, the number one defense mechanism is denial. If you've ever had a chat with someone that's addicted, a lot of times it will go like, oh, I can quit smoking whenever I want. I only drink when I feel like I want to drink, right? And that's how they perceive the whole situation that's going on. It's not, like she said, it's out of your control, that person. That's obviously you care about this person and you're trying to help them, but at that point it's them, and they have to get to that point where they're like, obviously I need help. You could play a part in helping them get there. You could help them reevaluate the choices they're making. You could help them, show them that they're making the wrong choices in a loving way. But even that may not work because a lot of times these people have low self-esteem. A lot of times they don't even care about how they look. They could be gaining weight from all the drinking, but they've fallen so far down in their low self-esteem that they don't even care how they look, you know? So that becomes challenging on your part too. Like, hey, you're gaining weight, maybe you should stop drinking. Hey, you kind of assaulted your brother the other day. But a lot of times they're disconnected from reality because it's taken a toll on them. And a lot of times when we're talking about substance use disorder, there's a lot of other mental health issues involved. There's depression, there's other psychotic disorders. They could be in active psychosis as well, you know? So all those things bundled together make it so hard for you and me, regular people, to deal with the situations because, like she said, you're not professionally trained to deal with these people. And it takes a lot of patience and knowing the right choice of words and how to talk to them and not push them away. So a lot of times medical advice is advised, but what I could say maybe can help is if you know the person and you know them, maybe they're a friend, family, loved one, knowing that person, maybe finding some trigger points that can bring them back to their old self, because there's always that point. They're not gone, they're not completely lost. They may be out of touch with a lot of emotional things that they're feeling, but the person's still there. And I feel like with the stigma, you tend to make it like the person's not there, or it's a whole new beast that's in the realm, but the actual person's still there. So you finding something, maybe a connection that that person had, maybe that may be all that they need, and maybe by you bringing that up front to their brain, that may trigger them and to the place where they go like, I think I need help. And when they get to that point, they're actually gonna go seek the help. They'll go seek the help and they'll be willing to go through it, which is another story because, like she said, it's not easy. There's withdrawal symptoms. It's not like you're gonna just wake up one day and be like, I give up smoking. It doesn't work like that. There's even your body won't take it because your body's now used to having the alcohol. That's why there's withdrawal symptoms that come with you not taking the alcohol, the shaking, all that other stuff that comes with it. So it's a process and it's draining and it's tiring, but I guess that's the patience she's talking about.
And also, I really love that you have mentioned bringing to the forefront of the brain. So one of the centers of the brain that's really affected in the addicted brain is that executive functioning center of the brain. And what do I mean by that? When you make beneficial decisions to your life, I have to go get a job, I have to pay my bills, those are all what we call executive ADLs, executive activities of daily living. So you are really using that the sane part of the brain, the reasonable part of the brain, to make these decisions that are very protective but also beneficial to your livelihood. With an addicted brain, that part of the brain has been hijacked, absolutely has been messed up. And that's why when it comes to executive functioning, but also decision making, you find someone who's highly educated, but the decisions they are making are not congruent with their educational background. And then you hear people, oh, kale omusajja yasoma naye munaye biki ebintu ebityo, because of that executive functioning center of the brain has been hijacked. So no one is there by the substance.
Wow.
Yeah. The only thing that is really hyper-regulated is what we call the dopamine reward system. They have a very hyper-regulated reward system. And that's what drives their decision-making. Whether it's safety, it doesn't matter. I need my fix, I'm going to walk in the dark to go find me the next alcohol to drink. But also the issue of withdrawal symptoms. Sometimes people's bodies are so dependent on the substance that even going without the substance is painful physically. People who are addicted to opioid use will tell you it's the most painful thing to go through. And that's why when we are medically detoxing them, we give them what we call supportive medications, like something for the stomach, for the runs. We give you something for the headaches. We give you something we try to really give you comfort medication so that you're able to go through the withdrawal phase in a very tolerable way. Sometimes that also stops people, even if they want to. But going through the withdrawals is not comfortable, and it's not easy at all. And it can be traumatic, by the way.
Yeah, when you think about how much time do we have? Like 10 more minutes or just 10? Yeah, because it's like when you look at drinking, sometimes it's kind of like, oh, it's so easy to blame somebody. They shouldn't be drinking, even if they have troubles. But it's like I've been reading about so many athletes who were injured when they are playing, and in the beginning it was genuinely pain. I have high tolerance for pain. Other people, it's like the pain might be 3 and they feel like it is 10. So yeah, it's like because I don't want to take medication, especially pain medication, only if I feel a lot of pain. So what happens with these people who become addicted? It's like was having the pain and then the emotional pain, kind of like taking these pills, they make this person sleep, feel very good, and then gradually, somebody who was taking the medication, because I've noticed with these doctors, You can boss them around. Some of them, you can boss them around and tell them, this one, I don't know the pain medication. What are those names? Tramadol is not working. It's like I took Tramadol, it's not working. What else do they give them? Yeah, Paco said, and then you say, and it's kind of like I was in a place, somebody had gone there for rehabilitation. I looked at this woman and I knew this woman is, I know it's kind of like, she had a slang for it. I'm going to get, I don't know, whatever she used something fancy, kind of like, I'm getting my special pills. And she was talking with her husband. She was in rehab. I had gone with somebody who was in rehab. And then I'm going to complain, this is not strong enough. I want something stronger. And she was there, I'm feeling a lot of pain. But it was, afterwards she said, no, it's not that bad. But she just wanted, the drugs. So it's like, how somebody is like, if somebody is married, maybe the husband or wife would follow through. But it's like if there is somebody like that who is asking for stronger medication, lying. Because with pain, I don't think they have anywhere to measure the pain. You may just scream and make a lot of drama, oh, I'm dying. And they give you stronger medication. So how can you help somebody like that? Because it's like, it is so easy to have somebody who is addicted on medication, pain medication, and it's like, I have the joint, the pain's here, the pain's there. And you say, I can take your strong medication. But when in the real sense, this person is becoming an addict. And it's like, even the doctor would have helped, she's lying or he is lying, saying, I'm feeling a lot of pain. So how can you help? What would be the signs that this person is getting addicted? How would you see? Because this is easy. Somebody in our midst can easily have this problem. And it's not like drunk. Hey, the Bible doesn't allow drinking. But with the drugs, the Bible is not saying anything. So it's kind of like somebody can be comfortable and get addicted and messes up her life. So how can you help such a person? What would be the signs?
So again, I don't know if you remember under the biological sphere, I did talk about physical health. So yes, you're right. Some people begin with having a legitimate physical condition, pain because they were playing and they got fractured, maybe an ankle fracture, and then they get prescribed pain medication along with other modalities of treatment. And sometimes we do have to legitimately medicate people for pain so that they can maybe engage in physical therapy because it is so painful, right? But then along the way, this person, and again, going back to the whole genetic vulnerabilities. If this person already has genetic vulnerabilities, and that's why as clinicians, doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, anyone who has a DEA number to prescribe, there is a responsibility.
You say genetic what?
Vulnerabilities.
So that means it's beyond that person's control?
It means they are vulnerable. It doesn't take much for them to become addicted to
so
that.
So it's in the genes?
Yes, it's in their gene.
How do they know that this person, the genes are?
Well, that's why you take a history and you ask, in your family, are there people who struggle with addictions? And the training also dictates that. And you're right, at one point there were actually doctors who just dished out pain addictive medication like it was candy. And that's how we ended up in the opioid epidemic. But now there are so many systems that punish prescribers who are reckless.
Is gabapentin a pain medication?
It is a pain medication, but it's supposed to treat neuropathic pain. However, in the last 5 years, it has turned into a controlled substance. I remember when I started prescribing, gabapentin was not a controlled substance, okay?
So they just started controlling recently?
In the last 5 years now, because when you show up now to pick it up, you need to bring your ID, okay?
Yeah, because I had
Before
that nerve pain.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I have high tolerance for pain, they gave me, I was supposed to take it 4 times a day. But I didn't realize because I'll take it only when I felt the pain. There was a time, it's like the prescription kept running and they would call me. I had so many bottles of gabapentin. I ended throwing it away because it's kind of like,
in fact,
until I said, wait a minute, Why are they giving me all this
In
medication?
fact, right now, the street value for gabapentin has really gone up ever since we began controlling it. Now, also, if you see nowadays, a lot of primary care doctors no longer want to prescribe controlled substances because they get smacked on the hand, okay? So in the state of Massachusetts, we have what we call the MassPart. The MassPart is a system, a database. If I prescribe you a controlled substance that you need to show an ID for, anyone in the state of Massachusetts can log in and look you up, and then they can tell you, no, you just picked up medications from someone so and so. But also, the pharmacist who dispenses that medication to you has a responsibility to go through the checks and balances to make sure you are not abusing the system as someone who is addicted, because again, your executive functioning is out of control. Your job and primary role as an addicted person is to source whatever you need. So the checks and balances around us, if we are more engaged as clinicians, it's the only way that we can really protect people.
Thank you. Okay.
I have a. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm back to Aunt Frida's question about the narcotics or whatever pain medication. So I'm speaking through my experience because I work on a rehab unit whereby we receive these patients with pain. Somebody comes with a prescription. They have either Oxycodone or they have Tylenol. So somebody will be in pain for real after surgery. So somebody will ask you for the pain medication. Then you ask, how do you rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? Somebody will tell you maybe 1 to 2. You can give a Tylenol, or maybe 8, 10. So they start from there. That's day one. The following day, pain continues. Somebody who had 5 milligrams Oxycodone is asking for 10. And when you do the pain assessment, you find out somebody who is laughing like the way we're talking here is telling you my pain is 10 out of 10. You as a nurse who is dispensing the medication, you have to give it because they tell us pain is what it is. I can tell you my pain is 10. You can't say no because I'm the one having the pain. So my question is, we as medical professionals, the doctors haven't helped enough these people because they continue prescribing instead of assessing the pain and telling them the outcome of those medication you take. They keep giving. Somebody who had like a 30 Oxycodone, the doctor comes in from 5 milligrams to 10. Somebody who had every 8 hours is coming to every 4 hours, 10 milligrams. Then after that, you find somebody after 2 hours is saying, oh, my pain medication. So it's because there is a lot in stock, and he knows anytime he's asking for it, he's gonna get it. So I always fight with these doctors because the more you prescribe, the more they need it. So it's all about these doctors. For me, as for one, I always tell them, please, help us not to prescribe this medication. Do your assessment. For me, I can give Tylenol. Tell them the outcome of this medication, what's going to happen if you take them. But I don't know whether it's a business between the doctors and the pharmacy.
Well, to answer that, and again, if you Google in the news nowadays, Purdue Pharmacy, that famous family who manufactures controlled substances, pain opioids, they have paid billions and billions of dollars in fines because they misled society, and they had paying systems where they did actually incentivize doctors to overprescribe opioids, okay? But I'm also telling you that right now, as it is, there are guidelines, and the DEA will not stop at calling and say, hey, in the last 6 months, you have prescribed 600 pills of Oxycodone. Why? So there are now systems in place, but we still have the rogue doctors, of course. Not everyone is perfect. But as a nurse, you do have a responsibility too, by your training, not to do harm. you can certainly fight back. I remember when I was going through nursing school, I worked in an emergency room, and we had this one doctor who the patients would even call and say, "Hey, is Dr. So and so working today?"
Oh my goodness.
You know, and then they would come. But I always had nurses who stood up to these word doctors and said, if you want them to get it, you go to the Pixies, get it yourself, and give it to them, because I'm not touching it. And by that, and I think we're also getting more and more support from the state. Did you know now that pharmacists can call and report doctors for overprescribing? As a nurse, too, you can pick up the phone and call and say, I'm expressing a concern. This is what's going on. So I can also tell you that part of prescribing is also a burden, because it takes guts to say no to people. It takes guts to say no to people. I can tell you that there are people who look me up online and they size me up. They know I can manipulate this one. They come, and first time they want Clonopin, they want Adderall, they want all of these things. But because of my training and the responsibility I have, if you do not fit the criteria to be prescribed those medications, my assessment, I cannot justify why you should have a controlled substance. I have the right to say no. And I have said no. I've got negative reviews, but at the end of the day, I go to bed and I sleep better as a prescriber, because I know I have made a decision that I'm not going to have to regret. At the end of the day, there are people who will always give it to them anyways, whether they will buy it from the street, which we don't want. But I think also you're right. There's got to be a sense of responsibility on the prescriber's end of things. But I think especially the state of Massachusetts, we have come a very, very long way. There are so many systems now in place for checks and balances. People are no longer dishing out opioids like candy. There are so many other things people are doing. Physical therapy, using SSRIs and also SNRIs to really help with that neuropathic pain. But also supporting people, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy for pain. All of those are all researched effective modalities of treatment. But I do feel, I just want to validate your frustration, that it can be frustrating.
I don't know how much time. I think we're out of time. So just the closing remarks. It's been wonderful. Next time, we'll let you know, maybe in 2 weeks' time. We had a function happening here, so we lost an hour and a half. But we are so happy that we are back in business. This is an area more so from the people from Africa. God has been helping us. When I think about what happened in Rwanda, that genocide, how people healed, I think sometimes we might, if we don't get healed quickly, people might lose it and become crazy. Because it's like something happens, you don't have anybody to talk to, you are not given any medication if you need it. So this is a very good opportunity for us to talk about this issue, which is very, very needed in our community. So, Sao Duncan, you can say your closing remarks, Senga Rosie, and we'll conclude with you.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'll just say a little something in a minute to what Mom just said. And this is to, if there's any nurses or any caregivers that are watching, our primary responsibility is to be advocates for all our patients. A lot of times, I've seen nurses discharge patients. A lot of times, the doctor will write the discharge paperwork, and the nurse will just skim over the instructions and not even ask if the patient's paying attention. Take, for say, opioids. I've heard a lot of stories of opioid addiction starting at a dentist's office when an 18-year-old has a tooth taken out and the nurse that's discharging them just skips over all the instructions, not telling this kid about the addictive properties of this medication. Don't take it if you don't need to take it. Or if you make sure you drink this amount of water so you don't get constipated. All those things, you just skim over them and you expect this person to go home and read those instructions. 10 out of 10 times they don't, right? And that's your sole responsibility as a nurse or as a caregiver to this person, because that's why you're in the job in the first place. So just to reiterate, it's our job, and our job is to advocate for our patients. Every person that you see, that's your job. And that's how I treat my patients, and that's how I think everybody should. Thank you all for being here. Otherwise, it was great. Thank you, Reverend Frida and Antros, for having us, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you all who are on the cyberspace and Zoom, and all our loved ones who are here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving us that time. It's a big opportunity in our community to be hearing such a very wonderful program like this. Thank you, Reverend Frida. And more so, next time, we're going to have it really on time so that we go into details, because you haven't talked about the how the recovery should be. You haven't talked about many of the addictions. So thank you for coming, and I really appreciate Susan and Duncan. Thank you for being there whenever we need you. Thank you, Reverend Frida.
I just want to say thank you so much for always giving me the opportunity to come and share with everyone. I also want to reiterate that addiction is a chronic condition. Addiction is a chronic condition. There is no such a thing as completely cured of addiction. People will go into sobriety for extended period of times, but like Duncan said, there are things that could trigger someone to relapse. I've also worked with people who have been in recovery for 20 years, and one thing happens, and that shifts the boat. It triggers events, and they go back to using. So I just want us to continue treating each other with empathy, with respect, and with kindness. It's the only way that we're going to be able to reach out to people and really bring them over for the care that they do actually deserve. Throwing stones at each other has not served us well, and I don't think it's something we should really continue. But I'm looking forward to continuing to have this dialogue continuing, because we really need to continue talking about it in our society.
Thank you very much.
Oh, someone has a question. Yeah, let her ask the question.
Thank you, thank you. I was talking here to Eve. I have a question. So because we are talking about, you talked about relapse. Like if I hear someone who had a miscarriage, because I had those problems before, and the minute I hear that someone had a miscarriage, I feel the same pain I had before, and I'll cry as if it just happened yesterday. Is it normal? Do I have a problem? Do I need medication? No, because it's just
That's a valid
amazing.
question.
Like
It is.
now Ziva is 9 years ago, age. I would have been like, I'm a spiritual woman, I pray, I believe in God.
Right.
But it just happened whenever someone tells me they had a miscarriage, I'll cry as if it's me.
Because again, miscarriages fall under trauma. The body keeps score. The body has a way of remembering what happened to it. And that's why I always tell people, we don't give trauma enough respect. Because trauma, there's so many ways it affects us, not just in one. A lot of the time we do relegate trauma to PTSD, military people. No. Even experiences like a miscarriage is traumatic. And part of the PTSD criteria is the reliving experiences. Something that happens to someone else triggers a response out of you. In terms of treatment, there are so many modalities that we use. There is one called cognitive processing therapy. So what do we do with that? We help people go back to that place of trauma and have the healing process come from zero. It's like I normally tell my clients that think of a garden hose. It has water coming out of it, you are watering the garden, and then you get a as those emotions going through the garden walls. But once you get a kink somewhere, you almost have to go back to that kink and unkink it and continue your healing process. Because what you just explained is the reliving experience criteria for PTSD. Now, you can have loved ones help you through it. And you said, I love that you have said you are a very prayerful woman. You believe in God. Why isn't this going away? Again, that goes back to the power of the brain as an organ. There's a reason why God gave researchers the brilliance to be able to really understand how the brain functions and the whole mind-body connection. So what happened to you was in the body, miscarriage, but the brain registers. The brain is what registers those experiences, and it files away all of those traumatic experiences. So if you do not have the opportunity to heal in a wholesome way, depending on the support you have, depending on the stigma you went through. There is shame around miscarriages, especially in our societies. We shame people for miscarriages. And that gets in the way of people healing in a way. So what we do as clinicians is we sit down with someone. I've had people sit in my office and I'm like, you know what? Your appointment is an hour, but screw that. I need you to sit down and I'm going to give you the empathic space, so to speak. This is about you. I need you to let it out. And it's not just in one sitting, but just even giving them that empathic space without judging them. They tell you it really feels good to finally share this with someone. And then the work begins. And then the work begins. But I can also tell you that there is hope. There is hope. People do get better. And people do overcome those traumatic experiences in a very emotional but also spiritual way. Does that make sense? And the difference is spiritual but not religious. So we have to learn to delineate that too. Okay? Yes. And they just reminded me. So I also want to talk about the nonprofit that I started and registered a year ago. You can all go online. I shared it with Brother Duncan. He will actually share with you. It's a nonprofit that's geared towards sensitizing our communities about substance use. It's geared towards improvement of access to treatment modalities, but also educating the younger generation, because education is power. Prevention is better than cure. So if we can grab the young ones before they get out of our hands and say, hey, just so you know, your friends might pressure you into trying this. But these are the repercussions. Like you said, it falls on us. It's really our duty to educate the next generation about the challenges of addiction. So please, I would encourage you to look that up. I gave the website to Brother Duncan. We are also 501c3. So we are tax exempt. Right now we are in the middle of signing up with a consulting firm to begin fundraising. Primarily, I have been the one funding everything, but I would love for all of us as a community to get together so that we can even begin having maybe once a month, we sit the young ones together. We sit and we talk about things in a very productive way, but also in a very age-appropriate way, because your needs as an adult are different from their needs over there in the back. So what I'm going to share with you might not be helpful to them over there, and what I share with them will not be helpful to you. So we have to make it age-appropriate, but also create a safe environment where they can talk about things. So those are some of the driving factors why I went out and started this. And then outside of here, also partnering with Butabika Hospital and also working with the ADU nurses, which is the alcohol drug unit nurses, to really help share. Like, if you are really interested, come with me when I go to Uganda, to really share with these nurses, our fellow colleagues in Uganda, they are very, very hungry for knowledge. They are very, very hungry for support, but it can be overwhelming when the resources are not there. So one of my dreams, and this will happen, is to have a fully stocked up medical library on the EDU unit, because education is power. If we're going to bring cutting edge treatments toward our country, we need to begin thinking about that. How can we support the people on the ground to be able to deliver the care that is needed?